Hello there, welcome back to World of Warship Legends on the console. I am Derka, and today we get our first look at the vaunted HMS Minotaur. The history of this ship in World of Warships is a long one, as it was one of the first Tier 10 tech tree ships in the game on the PC version. In Legends, she will sit at the top of the British light cruisers in the legendary tier. With Minotaur, the saying that big things come in small packages could not be more true. But the question on everyone's mind who plays Legends is, will Minotaur live up to the hype? Well, stick around and let's find out. Alright, so the Minnow is kind of familiar if you have played any of the Royal Navy light cruisers. She only has armor-piercing shells, comes with smoke screens, and is very squishy. The ship is actually quite versatile and can be set up to do different things, and that's kind of what I wanted to make the main focus of this video on. The choice comes down to two big things: the modules. You can choose to either have a smoke screen, or you can choose to use radar. We can delve into this a little more later, but for now, in this particular gameplay, I have chosen to use a smoke screen. My setup with this game was Tennant with basically full mobility. I did, however, use the Concealment mod instead of a double rudder. If you're going for a smoke build, I think that Fraser would be a good way to go, using fully packed to get 3 smokes, 3 heals, and 3 sonars, and then focusing on perks to boost your gun damage. If you wanted a radar-focused build to be extra dangerous to enemy destroyers, I think using Tennant and making your ship agile would be a good choice. I personally went with agility in smoke because of just how easy it is to get erased in this thing. So I basically did everything for this game here, at least, and the other games that I were doing successful. Everything was geared around keeping me alive, and it worked out pretty good, as this gameplay will kind of demonstrate. Since there is really only one other legendary tier cruiser right now to compare her to, light cruiser that is, the Worcester, I went ahead and pulled stats from the Colbert, who's coming to us very soon, and the Smolensk. These will be PC stats, so take it with a grain of salt, but I just wanted to have something else to compare it to that was, not the Alaska or the Stalingrad. Health points wise, 43,300. She has a bigger health pool than the Colbert and the Smolensk. The big takeaway here, though, is that Minotaur has access to fantastic super heals. The heal gives her a big advantage over the other high-tier light cruisers. The heal will give you back 17,300 health. It brings back 50% of some damage and 50% of citadel damage, which is huge. So if you smack a Minotaur, which will happen often, we'll get to that later, but it gets away, she will be healing a lot of that health back. With my setup and using fully packed, we have 3 of these heals. Fully packed is way more useful than refill station on this ship. To me, just because the reload is already blazing fast, you might as well get some useful consumables. Speaking of that, the next stat, gun reload, is 2.8 seconds, and the AP shells hit for 3,200 apiece, tying with the Worcester there, but better AP alpha than Colbert or Smolensk. Minnow will have a pretty incredible AP alpha, AP DPM, far better than the Worcester because the reload is just blazing fast. Anyone giving you broadside will definitely pay for it. On this note, the shells we have here are ones that we are used to from the rest of the line. They are short fuse British AP, so they will not overpenetrate targets as bad, including destroyers. And you saw how quickly we made short work of that Shimakaze. And man, that felt good. Shimas have had this coming for a long time, and I can't wait to kill a few more. The short fuse AP British shells here, they also have increased penetration angles, allowing them to not ricochet quite as much. The gun range on Minotaur is not the greatest at 15.8, but I would point out that at longer ranges the shells tend to float back to Earth, so sometimes it can be difficult to aim at long range. Take this Khabarovsk for instance, maybe he pushed the rudder back just a little bit as he was reversing and we missed A lot. Let's just say a lot. Now granted, as you play the ship more, you'll get a little bit better at long range aiming, and I'm hoping to say the same for myself. It is not easy to aim at long range, so for me, buffing with Kuznetsov or using anything to increase the range anymore is just, it's not that useful. I would rather try to get in close personally. The AA rating is of course incredible at 100. This is one of the best AA armaments in the game, and I have nothing buffing it. No modules, no commanders, no perks, nothing. The AA will start lighting enemy planes up at 6 kilometers. So enemy aircraft carriers would be very wise to give Minotaur a wide berth. Ship speed was just okay, unless you spec into it. Base, 33.5 knots. On my setup, 37.6 knots, because basically I put every single perk into mobility. Velocious, full speed ahead, blah, blah, blah. Turning circle, 660 meters. It is fantastic. Not Fiji-esque at 590. That spoiled us way back at tier 6, but very, very good. For just a little bit of a comparison, that is better than Wichita. So, not a bad turning circle at all. Rudder shift base was 8.3 seconds, so that would be like a full DPM build. But if you buff into this with some perks, you can make yourself a pretty good agile cruiser, and a very difficult target to hit indeed. A full mobility setup, double rudder, all the good stuff, Azure Lane Baltimore, 3-second rudder shift, not too shabby. Since I went with concealment on here and not the double rudder, I have a 6.3 rudder, which is doable. But speaking of that concealment buff, that is one of the highlights of Minotaur. Just like the other Royal Navy light cruisers, she is very, very stealthy, and it's great to get her into some tight spots. She is far superior to the Worcester, the Smolensk, and the Colbert in this regard. She 100% has the ability to stealth radar, if you were so inclined to put some more points into the stealth. Radar range, 9.9 kilometers, and my surface detectability right here was also 9.9. But you could easily have a higher level Makawa, the concealment mod in Swirsky, and have a viable stealth radar ship. The Minotaur could be a little tricky to play at times. I think it's mostly owed to her very, very squishy nature. Let's take a look at the armor viewer really quick and see why. You are wrapped basically head to toe in 16 millimeters of armor. Aft, stern, on the sides, the deck. But to make matters worse is the Citadel. Pretty much the entire thing, which is huge by the way, is above the waterline, and there's a big portion in the middle that is actually even higher, and it's raised. So you will get penetrated from almost any range, any angle, and from caliber shells that normally you wouldn't have to worry about. But because your armor is so thin, you're going to have a very difficult time armor angling against much of anything. Makes you very, very susceptible to getting shot, essentially. So the other thing that we really haven't talked about yet, you've seen me use him a couple times this game, but the fantastic torpedo armament. How does 8 torpedoes on each side sound? They can be single-fired like other British ships in the game. They reach 10 kilometers and deal nearly 17,000 damage apiece. They aren't very fast. 62 knots is how I had them on here. That's with nothing spec'd onto them. I kind of just think of them as zoning torpedoes. Regularly just launch them anywhere I think an enemy might show up at, and definitely use them to fill enemy destroyers' smoke screens with. They're kind of susceptible to being knocked out. Just like everything else on this ship, it is easy to damage. Given their range though, you can actually stealth torpedo in some instances, which is pretty unique. If you used Fraser and Home Run in slot 2, and or put a little bit more into the concealment such as Swirsky, you could absolutely stealth torp. So what I think the big conversation with this ship is going to come down to is going to be radar or smoke. Now obviously I am using smoke screens in this game, and I did that because I mean the ship is very squishy. One screw up essentially and you can get taken out of the game. So I like the variability that the smoke screens add. It gives me a little bit more options, basically. Instead of having to run for your life the entire time or hide behind islands, you can find good positions like this, set up crossfires, and use your smoke screen. Now with radaring, I mean, I think if you got good at a radar Minotaur, you could be the most fantastic asset to your team. And I hope to get there. I think I just need a little more practice with the ship before I, you know, delve into it that much. I think the big tip with radar would be to spec into your maneuverability or your concealment. Since you don't have smoke, you're going to have to find another way to stay alive. Yes, you can hide behind the islands, but eventually you might have to sail out. Like in this game, we've had to make some moves, basically. Our side got overran. Flank speed on Azurlane Belfast, or just using Tennant with the full speed ahead, Velocious, rudder shift, all of that stuff, those would be good options. Azurlane Baltimore as an inspiration to help your rudder shift could help as well. And I also played around with using Vian a couple times just to see if it would save me from getting blapped. Good positioning, while it is daunting, if at the beginning of the game you're able to get into a good forward island, that would be pretty good. You just kind of play passively, play defensive once you get in a good spot, and hold enemies at bay. I kind of did that in this game, although this map can be a little tricky over there on that side in A spawn. You're very susceptible to getting trapped in there between those two islands. Now, if you are going to do some smoke screen usage, I just wanted to give a couple more tips because I see people flub this up all the time. Number one, these ships slow down very, very slowly, so be sure to reduce your speed to half or 15 knots before you try and deploy your smoke. Your enemies, especially good battleship players, will be expecting this, and you'll be very vulnerable just before you disappear in your smoke screen. Sometimes you might even consider just stopping completely before smoking up, and then that way if someone fires, you could hit the accelerator real quick because the thing starts so quickly. Either way, you're very, very vulnerable when smoking up, so be careful. I would also make it a habit to move around in your smoke screen. Blind firing in smoke is not a skill a ton of players have in Legends, but it can definitely happen. That coupled with your rate of fire. Your guns are shooting so fast that the enemy can literally draw a line from the fountain of AP you're spitting out back to you. Just keep moving back and forth to avoid being in a YouTube montage. And lastly, make sure you have someone spotting for you. Kind of like just what happened here, and I figured it's what was going to happen, but I had to smoke anyways just to stay alive. But if no one is spotting for you, you could have wasted a smoke, or worse yet, you could have blinded teammates behind you that you had the line of sight on the enemy. So be careful, look at your map, make sure you are not the most forward ship before you use your smoke screen. So, open water gunboating, how does the Minotaur do it that? Well, luckily right now I'll just say that I only have a GK shooting at me and another Minotaur. It is very easy to dodge the Minotaur shots, kind of like in Atlanta at range or even a Cleveland. And then the GK is, well, maybe the most inaccurate battleship at legendary tier right now, but yeah, we're doing okay. It's viable. This is with all the perks that I could put into mobility except for a double rudder. I think it's something you could get away with as long as you stay pretty far away. The rudder shift can get down to pretty good at 3 seconds. The speed, meh. We have ours up to about 37 knots. It's something you would have to be very careful with and make sure you have your heels on deck still. Also, worth pointing out right now, basically I'm just farming damage. There's no reason I even need to be shooting these guys. Just kind of having some fun, testing out the mobility stuff for you guys. Overall, I think the Minotaur is pretty fun. I look forward to playing it some more, learning it, and getting a little better with it. And then I will start delving into the radar build when I feel pretty confident. Because I'm not going to do my team any good if I am dead the whole game. Let me know what you guys think of Minotaur in the comments section down below, if it looks like a ship that you are willing to buy, and if you are happy or upset about this being the first legendary tier campaign ship. Like I mentioned in a previous video, it's 42 days to get the Minotaur, and that is better than a unboosted Bureau project, which would be over 50 days. So at least we'll get a lot more light cruisers at legendary tier out here for everyone. Please leave a like on the video, as that will greatly help, and be sure to subscribe for future content. We have a big tier 7 British battleship to cover the light on this week if you are interested, so be sure to subscribe for that. Alright guys, I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.